Now let's take a look at the system setup. System setup can be accessed off the F2 in the menu. So we'll press that, and it brings us to this display, starting off with the general setup as one of actually 4 pages of information regarding the setup of the unit. General setup gives you a choice up on top. The default is normally to have the unit display in the 4-way or quad display, or you can actually have it in a split screen display by going to the 2 multi instead of the default 4 multi. By selecting the 2 multi, you can have a 2-way display if you just want to have, let's say, waveform and vector side by side. That can also be saved as a preset so that you could recall that later on and switch between the 2 instead of going back into the menu. That's the multi-display. Underneath that is the capture function, or the capture mode, I should say. In the capture mode, you have the ability to be able to do a screen capture that we talked about in an earlier chapter as a bitmap file, or you can have it actually saved as an actual video or frame of video. What that means is that if you save an actual frame of video, you're able to recall that off of USB stick, because as you'd save it onto a USB, you'd be able to recall that, and you'd have an actual frame of video, which then allow you to produce waveform, vector, picture from that frame. Let me also mention that if you select video frame instead of screen, you will be able to choose between capturing an actual frame of video or capturing the picture as a full resolution TIFF file. The next is the information display. And the information display decides what you actually see up on the top in regards to the format, the date, the time. Maybe you want to show time code instead of the date. The color system and input, all those can be displayed up on the top of the screen or taken off if it looks like it's maybe too busy and there's too much information there. That's the information display. The next is the LCD setup. The LCD setup pertains to the backlight that's used on the LCD for the LV5770. Under normal circumstances, you'd have it in the high position, so you could see under normal lighting in a room. But if you happen to be operating it in a low light situation, you may find that the backlight produces a display that's a little too bright, and you might want to switch it to the low backlight. The second selection is the auto off function. And the auto off function allows you to save the backlight by having it go off after either 5 minutes, 30 minutes, or 60 minutes of non-use. So what that means is, again, the backlight will go off and the screen will go blank. But the unit is still operational. When you come back and push one of the buttons, you'll bring the unit back to life. All right? The last selection happens to be the menu setup. You may have noticed either in this chapter or a previous chapter that after I make a selection in the menu, that you may see the menu go away. And you can determine how long the menu actually stays up based on your own feelings of how long you need to have it up there. You can turn that on or off, but the normal selection would be to have that on so that it will drop off and it won't block any information that's on the screen. And you can come down to the time selection, and you can actually choose whatever time that you want. Now let me show you how you make a selection such as that. I'm turning the FD control here on the right hand side, which is again the function dial control, and I'm moving it down through the selections all the way down to the bottom, to the last one. And I'm going to select the time. And to make that active, I'm going to press the button in. And by pressing the button in, I now make that active. And I can go and I can select a different time. Let's just go back to what it was before, which was 12 seconds. As you can see there by the menu and by the description, you could have it up to a minute. So the menu could actually stay up for as long as a minute. You would press the button back in to actually make that selection. And then the last thing you need to do is hit the F1 button to complete and save the selection that you made. All right, that information is now saved. So let's go back to the system setup. And we're now going to go on to the next selection in this section, which happens to be the Ethernet. You probably noticed that down here you've got buttons here, not only the complete button, but you've got a previous tab where allows you to back up to the previous selection, or the next tab allows you to go to the next one. So we'll hit the next and go to our Ethernet setup. The LV5770 has an Ethernet port on the back. And what that means is that you can connect the unit to a computer or to your network and be able to monitor, control it remotely. Here's where you'd come in and either set it for DHCP, which you can see it's set for if you wanted to have it on your network, or you could come in and manually set the IP address and fill in all the information here in regards to not only the IP address, but the subnet mask, the default gateway, and so forth, so that you have the proper communication between the unit and either, again, your computer or your network. All right? Again, once you've got it hooked up, you can take advantage of the web server that we have, and the web server display allows you to be able to monitor the unit remotely. And by that I mean that when you set the IP address and you call it up, on your computer monitor, you're going to see a graphic just like having the unit in front of you. And then you're able to take your mouse and you're able to point and click on the buttons to actually change the functions. In fact, this allows you to remotely see what's going on with the monitor when it happens to be somewhere else. And that's the web server, and the web server is standard. It's built into all the units. Let's go to the next tab. The next tab happens to be the remote setup. We happen to have a legacy connector in the back, which allows for you to set up a contact closure situation if you wanted to remotely operate, let's say, a preset that you've saved. So this is really a legacy type connection that's been on there for all of our units and gives you the opportunity to be able to control it remotely via contact closure. The last item is simply just the date and the time. This is where you'd come in, set the day, set the month, the year, set the time. It works on a 24-hour clock, and set that up so it's correct. Using the LV5770 system setup allows you to customize the operation of the unit based on what your preferences are and what your needs are. Once you go through the setup menu, you make the selections as to what you want to see on the screen. Then again, you can personalize it, customize it to what your needs happen to be.